Pitchers and catchers are reporting. Injury news is starting to trickle in. The last few free agents are getting signed. We'll talk about all that coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinke. We are brought to you by Edge Boost and by Fantrax. It is the Job Battles Podcast. Fred and I identified 10 plus very interesting job battles, and we're going through them right now. I thought we'd kind of get your takes on this if you're in the live stream with us here, and we're excited about it. But we're going to start off, though, Fred, with Kenley Jansen signing with the Angels today.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Before we talk about Kenley Jansen, are the Angels trying to win this year? Like, is that what's happening? Because I think of the Angels as bad. But then they signed Kenley Jansen, like, who I don't think helps them win, although he's very relevant for fantasy, and they paid him $10 million. Like, do you think the Angels think that they could make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I think they at least are kind of sort of trying. I mean, they kicked off the offseason. We talked a little bit about the Jorge Soler deal last week. You know, that going and trading for him to start off the offseason. You know, they signed, and since we last talked, they signed Yoan Moncada to give themselves a better pivot for Anthony Rendon. Luis Rengifo is hurt, you know, coming into spring training. So is Zack Neto. So something to watch for there. But, you know, they have this kid named Christian Moore that might get the call right away. You know, pitching wise, they signed Kyle Hendricks right away. They signed Yusei Kikuchi. Kikuchi is actually like a legitimate real signing. He's a real pitcher. And I like what he did in Houston. I wish he would have landed elsewhere. But look at the rest of the division. Seattle, they didn't sign anybody of note this offseason. Houston pared down. They traded away Kyle Tucker, traded away Ryan Presley. This is not like the other, but still, you know, they've done some adding, but they've done more subtracting than adding. The Athletics are adding because they have to. They're required to, basically, because of the rev sharing rules that are in baseball. So that, you know, you could look across the division. It's not like it's certainly not the NL West in terms of being hyper competitive. It's not the AL East in terms of being hyper competitive. I could see a scenario where they sneak in. You know, it's far flung, to be honest, but it's there. I think they're trying without being all in. And frankly, being all in for them hasn't worked out very well.
No, nothing's really worked out for them very well, which is why Mike Trout has, like, whatever it is, 3 playoff games or whatever it is, to his credit.
Yep.
So to throw some cold water on all the positives that you are somewhat positive,
sort of positive. Yes.
The PECOTA standings that were projected before their seismic signing of Kenley Jansen projected them to finish third last in the American League, ahead of only the White Sox and A's. They have them 5 wins behind the next closest team. And as far as what you were saying about the AL West, actually, so when you were saying it's not the NL West, whatever, the Rangers, Houston, and Seattle are all projected to finish better than the third place team, the Padres, in the NL West. So,
the Padres also haven't been trying this offseason.
No, they haven't.
No.
I'm just saying the third place team in the AL West is projected for 86 wins. That's the best of any third place team in baseball. The Jays are also projected, I'm just rounding off, but the Jays are also projected for 86 wins. And that's the other division that has an 86 win team in third place. The NL West has an 85. That's the Padres. But anyways, so the AL West actually expected by and then again, these are just the PECOTA standings projections, have 3 teams at 86 wins. I think the Angels have absolutely no chance, but to pivot for fantasy, I think Kenley Jansen is going to be their closer. Like, I know that
for sure
people have talked about, like, will it be Kenley Jansen or Ben Joyce? Because maybe at this point in his career, Jansen's not as good of a pitcher as Ben Joyce. It's going to be Kenley Jansen. I mean, I just don't think you sign Kenley Jansen and pay him $10 million. What, for just like a high 3s ERA setup guy? Like, that doesn't make any sense. He's there at 37 years old to be their closer. Ben Joyce is 24. He's never been a closer. Maybe it suppresses his paycheck for another year to leave him in a setup role. Maybe it's better for the team to have his 102-mile-an-hour fastball in a more versatile role and not just in the ninth inning. I don't know exactly what their thinking was. All I know is I really firmly believe that when we hit the All-Star break, Kenley Jansen will have most of the Angels saves.
I agree. I don't think there's any ambiguity. They signed him to close, and there's no doubt about it there. By the way, who has more saves? Billy Wagner, who just got into the Hall of Fame, or Kenley Jansen?
I'll say Kenley Jansen.
Loaded question, right?
Yeah.
But I think because it's so funny, Nick Whalen and I were talking about Kenley Jansen from the 6M show tonight, and he asked me before we started the segment, "Do you think he's a Hall of Famer?" And I was like, no way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wagner has like more in his favor, but it's not so far flung. It's not so out of this realm that he could be in that conversation. That he's an accomplished pitcher and he's done a lot. It's just that it seems like he's done, and he's still closing. He could add another 30 more saves this year. He could be the guy who gets traded at the deadline this year to be a closer for somebody else after the deadline too. We'll see what happens with that. Definitely bringing Ben Joyce down a few pegs. I don't think he'll get 0 saves, but he'll get some.
Yeah, and if the Angels season goes how I expect it to go, Kenley Jansen could easily be moved at the deadline, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm kind of projecting right now, I'm feeling like Kenley Jansen for like 20 saves, which I feel like might even be aggressive. But I know 20, I'll go 20 saves. Let's say he has about 20 saves by the deadline. And, who knows if he gets any saves after that, because I don't know if he's not the level of pitcher where if a contender picked him up, he'd definitely be their closer. We'd have to see what their situation is. And then Ben Joyce could easily get maybe 10.
Right.
But his 10 may come later for the most part. So like either after Jansen, who knows, whatever. The other thing about Jansen is he's hardly been a workhorse the last couple of years. 54 innings last year, 44 the year before.
Right.
He's pretty long in the tooth. I don't think Ben Joyce is draftable anymore. He's like in a standard mixed league. Like he's not that good of a reliever, despite how hard he throws. Like his ratios won't be low enough to make it worth keeping him in a setup role.
Kirby Yates or Ben Joyce? It's Yates, right? If you're having to stash one of them, I think so too.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I would actually use Yates.
Right.
Actually, I was just writing an article the other day, and like the Yates StatCast data from last year is ridiculous. So like, what did it go to? Pitchers who had faced 200 batters last year or more, he had the lowest expected batting average. It was like the second lowest expected slugging percentage. Like Yates' stats last year were insane as far as how effective he was. So if I need to put a guy on my bench in a mixed league where like I'm going to use him sometimes, and I'm also maybe speculating on saves, then I would take Yates or Joyce. I wouldn't really want Joyce like at this point. Like I know he throws super hard, but his strikeout rate's just fine for a reliever. Like it's solid. It's not incredible for a reliever. I just think I could do better.
You're about to start up the Tout Wars Draft and Hold League, and obviously that's a little bit of a different animal there when you're trying to find guys to be able to pick up. You're going to have to stash some relievers. I would also stash Yates over Joyce there too, even though if Joyce has a shorter path to closing, Yates is just a better pitcher. And like to your point, I could use him in a week where I have bad starts in a given week there, like a Dodger start, a Coors Field start, something like else there, I'm going to go Yates in the 30th, 30. The problem is you're not getting him in the 30th round. You're probably having to pay it in somewhere in the 20s. And I probably won't pay for either of those at that cost. So we'll find others. So there's plenty of others you could find, including relievers in the Red Sox bullpen. Red Sox, they've got, it's official. Jansen's not coming back. They've got a lot of mystery in their bullpen. It's Liam Hendricks coming back from injury, Aroldis Chapman, Garrett Whitlock going back to relieving. Justin Slayton has been, pegged for maybe by some sources to have like their hand in the saves pie. What do you do with this Red Sox bullpen?
Okay, so I feel like this is one of those. Remember when they teach you how to do multiple choice questions when you're in school? So you're supposed to start by getting rid of the answers that you aren't the right answer.
Okay.
So I'll start by getting rid of Chapman. Like I just don't see Chapman He's the only lefty that we just talked about. They have one other lefty, Justin Wilson, in their projected bullpen. Like, I just don't think they make Chapman the closer and make all the right-handers the setup guy. I think Chapman's like, maybe he gets a few saves, but I think he's not the closer. So I'm going to take him out right away. And then that leaves obviously all the other candidates, Hendricks, Whitlock, and Slayton.
Right.
I feel like the job is Hendricks if he could actually look great in spring training, but that's like such a big if.
Yeah, exactly.
At his age and with everything he's gone through the last few years, like I think he's the one with closer experience. He's the older pitcher. I think he would be the guy. I mean, we're talking about a guy who in 2021 and 2022 had 38 and then 37 saves, and just like also incredible strikeout numbers. Like, you know, was a top flight closer. So if he looked like himself, he's the guy. Like, I feel like it's Hendricks versus Hendricks for the closer's role. And then if he can't be the guy, then it's like the velocity's not there. They're worried about his durability, whatever. Then they pivot and start considering Whitlock and Slayton.
It's funny. There's a note on RotoWire right now about Hendricks from Craig Breslow. Gabrielle Starr of the Boston Herald reporting they're open to using Hendricks and others in a closer by committee.
That could be it.
Helps us not at all. But yeah, and he mentioned Whitlock and Slayton and Chapman as the other possibilities there. So to that end, all right, we're talking job battles. That is a job battle. We're not going to talk any other closer job battles in this podcast. I'll save that for another pod. Plenty more. You could do like closers for a couple hours.
Its own pod. Yeah, you could do closer job battles. It could be its own episode. For sure.
So we'll do that at some point. But we're going to try to identify other job battles I think are impactful, interesting, have a take on, you name it there. We've got more than 10. We named it 10, but we might go a little bit more than that. Let's stay in Boston though. Let's talk about second base for them. And, second base, which kind of spills over to outfield for this team because they've got David Hamilton, Kristian Campbell. They've got, Vaughn, Grissom, who we're still holding out hope for, added 20 pounds of muscle this offseason. And like the fallout of that is like someone might like sit on Rafaela's moving to center field full time, but they also have a kid named Roman Anthony who might factor in. They also have, Marcelo Meyer as well as someone who might factor in. They have multiple options among prospects if they choose to work them in this year.
Yeah, and I'm sure Roman Anthony's coming at some point. Like, I feel like Rafael is kind of keeping the seat warm, and he probably opens the season in center field, and then at some point in the season, Anthony is up, and Rafael probably moves to a backup role. I mean, there'll also be injuries along the way. Like, who knows, right? Like how Anthony gets up, maybe, who knows, Duran gets hurt or Abreu gets hurt or something like that. But I feel like Anthony still starts the season in the minors. And Rafaela holds the job and hits at the bottom of the lineup. I think David, from what you were talking about with second base, I feel like David Hamilton, I've already read that he's going to get a lot of work in the outfield. So I think Hamilton's kind of out on the contest to be the starting second baseman. Like, I think he's more the backup second baseman / backup outfielder, utility guy, steals a base, can't hit that well. I was kind of briefly interested in him as a late round fantasy pick, and then I read more about his expected role and I'm out. So that leaves Campbell versus Grissom. I think they would love for it to be Grissom because, like, at this time last year, there was like real expectations for him. Like, he came over in the Chris Sale trade, right?
Yeah.
That worked out pretty darn well for Atlanta, right? So, and he was like a huge part of the Chris Sale trade. So, like, that was the whole story, is Boston was getting rid of this older pitcher who had been broken down, and they were getting away from his contract, and they were getting this guy, Vaughn Grissom, who you weren't sure if he could field, but he could definitely hit. Like, he hits like 300 basically every year in the minors. And, and then it didn't, like, he was injury prone last year, and spent most of the season and injury prone at the beginning of the year, and then spent most of the season in the minors. I think they'd love for it to be Grissom, and then for Campbell to come up at later, or maybe not be needed at all. Like, maybe comes up when there's an injury, but not needed, as in Grissom can't hold the job.
Right.
Is Grissom someone who should still be, like, am I too optimistic on Grissom? Is he someone who should still be on your draft radar in a 15-team league?
I think so. I'm going to pull up the recent ADP on him just as kind of a guy because usually the NFFC folks don't whiff too much, but he's a late round guy. He's 469, so
Mm-hmm.
later than I thought, to be honest. There, so
Mm-hmm.
I think the public, Hamilton goes before Grissom. Soda, but by about 100 points actually. Although at 359 versus 459, there's honestly not that much of a distinction because anything after 300, there's a lot of players that aren't getting drafted in every single draft. So that throws the algorithm off a little bit there. I think Campbell goes. I think Campbell goes before both. I think everybody wants Campbell to win that job. I think it's dangerous sometimes relying on that. Sometimes he might be the best player. Certainly the best player in the long run, but it might not be the case this year and might not be the case in April.
Oh yeah, exactly. And in April, as you said, that really matters in a lot of formats. Like we don't have room to stash Campbell. Like you were talking about a draft and hold. Sure, whatever. Draft and hold. If you think that Campbell's going to be up by June and be the second baseman the rest of the year, then go ahead and stash him. But and Campbell's minor league numbers in not a lot of work, 137 games, are really good. Like if he could get the job, he would be really viable in fantasy. But Vaughn Grissom's like offensively through the minors, like he's no slouch either. Like his career on base percentage in the minors is 404. He's still only 24. Like I think last year was just a washout with him where he just couldn't stay healthy. Like I think he gets another chance in spring training. Like I said, I feel like it's his job to lose. There's even with Campbell's prospect status, or it's Campbell has to really win it. Like he really has to be the talk of Boston media during spring training. Like, can you believe how good this Kristian Campbell guy is? Vaughn Grissom's fine, but this Kristian Campbell guy is special. Like it has to be one or the other. Like if there's any ambiguity between the two of them, I feel like they go with Grissom.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's his last best chance. Maybe not last, but it's getting close to last. I mean, he hasn't burned those Boston bridges just yet, but I also think, like you said, that they want to see some return on that Chris Sale investment, especially because it worked out so well for Atlanta. I mean, I feel like you almost feel like they have to give it every last chance before giving up and moving on. All right, let's stick in the division. Let's talk about the Baltimore Orioles. You kind of pitch this as Jackson Holliday versus Coby Mayo, with Jordan Westbrook playing either second or third base is the underlying kind of concept here. Is there a universe, first of all, where all three play?
I don't think so. Do you see that as a possibility? Like when I look at the rest of the lineup, I don't think that there's room. Like where would the third guy play? Like would he be the DH?
I mean, that's the problem. Is it DH?
I think no. I think Ryan O'Hearn has hit well enough for them, and if Ryan O'Hearn isn't the DH against right-handers, then it's probably because Heston Kjerstad is hitting well, and maybe he's the DH. If you just look at for example, like Hearn's projection on Roto Resource is a 768 OPS, Kjerstad's a 751. I don't know if both Mayo and Holliday do enough better than that to push them out of their roles.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, I think, O'Hearn has done well enough. Kjerstad, I mean, I just grabbed Kjerstad in a draft and hold, and looking at this depth chart, it's like I like him, but I don't know. Is there a way for him to play? O'Hearn really is this big blocking point. It's a good problem to have that the Orioles have so many good, fun young hitters, but they can't find a way for all of them to play. I mean, O'Hearn's making $8 million this year. That's enough for him to be able to play. He did do pretty, okay. Honestly though, Fred, it's the 761 OPS is pretty good.
He's not that good.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Hearn's not that good. He's like the first year with the Orioles, he was better, 801. They could just climb above that 800 kind of threshold. It looks really nice having an 8 at the front, but
he's also 31. He's not getting better.
It was brutal as a member of the Royals, like awful. So he's turned things around in Baltimore. I think it's another situation where, like we were talking about in Boston, like it's O'Hearn's job. He'll start the season as the DH against right-handers. Kjerstad will probably, mostly, be a backup, pick up some starts in the outfield, play a couple days a week, 3 days a week, 3 days a week, probably something like that. And then we'll see how O'Hearn hits. It is totally, I think, possible that O'Hearn's hitting has a 650 OPS in May and at the start of May and starts losing some playing time.
Yeah, but the question is, it might not be Mayo. And they might choose to hold the Mayo down in the minors,
Right.
and
Could be
stay
Kirsten.
and play Kierstad. It may, they have, Dylan Carlson, his last best chance, maybe not best chance. He might not even make the team. They signed Ramon Laureano. I mean, they've got like alternatives coming out of their ears. They have so many things that they can kind of turn to there. So that makes it difficult. I mean, so between Holliday and Mayo, and it might not be either, could be the answer, by the way, too. But choosing between them, who do you like better?
I think Holliday, just from his like incredible prospect status, gets the first shot. Like, I know he was awful last year offensively for them, but I just think like that 1.1 draft pick, I think he gets the bloodlines. Like, I don't know. I just think he gets the first shot. And he was awful last year. In the second half, he had a 650 OPS. Now, I know a 650 OPS isn't good, but it is a little better than what he was doing prior to that. It's not far off. You know what I mean? Getting like a 700 where then they can just kind of leave a young guy. He's only 21. They just kind of leave a young guy in the lineup and let him play. I think it's Holliday. I'm wary of drafting him where he goes right now. I probably won't have any shares of him, but I'm kind of for now just like out on Mayo in any sort of standard 15 team 30 round league.
I agree.
And I'm pretty wary on Holliday. Like, I'd love to get excited about Holliday, but there's just, between some playing time competition, you're right, there is a chance that they both stink, and Ramon Arias just plays second base for a while.
Just ticks us off for another season. Yeah, absolutely.
I think if Arias, like, he wouldn't win the job, they'd just be like, okay, these two young guys aren't hitting at all, so you can play. Like, we'll put them back in the minors or whatever and try to figure it out, but you can play for now. So they do have him as just a fallback, although I don't think that's, what they want. I think it'll be Holliday. Like I said, like, I want to get into Holliday. I see his skill set and I see how it could be really good for fantasy once he like finds his stride at some point. I'm just not sure if I would take him ahead of the late rounds, and I don't think he lasts till the late rounds.
I'd agree with all of that.
Just still enough hype around him.
Yeah, it's clear. Hey, don't forget that he was a number 1 overall pick just a couple of years ago. He's got plenty of time to realize his potential. Even if he doesn't,
he's barely 21.
Yeah, even if he doesn't do so this year, he's still not a bust. People are so quick to declare guys bust, and I'm just like,
no way. Yeah.
But Holliday is going the earliest of all these guys, by the way, at 220. Mayo's going at 357. Now I'm doing NFBC from February 1st to February 11th as my ADP tracker. Your sources may vary, your filters may vary. That's just what I'm looking at right there. I honestly think that I think O'Hearn begins the year as a starter and doesn't finish the year as a starter is my prediction. But it may not be Mayo that benefits. It may be Kierstad. But anyways, very interesting.
It may also even be a trade for a team that's supposed to be trying to win, right? Trying to win the World Series. Like, that's even another possibility, is that in July, O'Hearn's got a 720 OPS, Kierstad's got a 720 OPS, and they're just like, no, we're going to go out and get a really good hitter for the middle of our lineup.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Let's move on. Stay in the division again. Let's talk about the New York Yankees. They've got a ton of viable starting pitching options. But we know Cole, Fried, Rodon. I think those guys are pretty well set. For 4, 5, 6, even 7, really, you could look at Clarke, Schmidt, Luis Heel, Marcus Stroman, and I'll even throw in Will Warren, who was a big disappointment as a prospect last year, but I still think he's in the mix a little bit too. Who do you like among those for the two guys for those bottom 2 spots?
I think Luis Heel's in. Like, I think
so just bottom 1 spot then.
Yeah, I think just off the season he just had, I think he's in, and just his potential. He's the youngest guy of them, although he's 26. Like, he's not a 22-year-old prospect or something, but I think he's in. I think it's the 1 spot, and I think it really just comes down to this. I think it's pretty definitive that if Clarke Schmidt's healthy, he's a better pitcher than Marcus Stroman. But Marcus Stroman is the veteran with the contract, without relief experience. We also know that Marcus Stroman has a lot of pride, comes with a bit of attitude. Like, that's his persona. He's always been like that kind of guy, feisty kind of guy, like, as far as managing a clubhouse. And how would Marcus Stroman handle going to the bullpen? So to me, it's almost like, what's the right thing versus what's the easy thing. Like the right thing for the Yankees, I think, is if Clarke Schmidt's healthy, he's in the rotation. Like this is his age 29 season. He was really good last year. Like his strikeout rate went way up. I know his ERA was 2.85. Like I know that was artificially low, but still his ERA estimators were more in the mid to high threes. That's really nice. Like he's got way more potential than Stroman. But the easy thing to do is say, you know what, Stroman's the veteran with the contract. A lot of teams do want to kind of stockpile pitching. And Schmidt did spend an entire season, 2022, almost entire season in the bullpen. So, you know, you keep him in the bullpen in long relief until you need a starter. So that's where I'm wary on this one. I'd actually be interested in Schmidt if I wasn't so wary that he's going to end up in April, at least in the bullpen, or they go to a 6-man rotation. But I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I don't think that's it. I could just see Schmidt as a multi-inning reliever. He even has one option.
I think that's crazy if they do even think about doing something like that for Mr. 147 whip Stroman in his pride. I say they tell him, hey, you got the contract. That's what the money's for. Learn how to relieve.
Yeah, they could. He would not be an asset, I think, out of the bullpen at all because his low strikeout rate.
I don't see the Yankees as the type of team says, well, money is going to dictate this decision. They shouldn't. I think, and the market agrees, by the way. The market is 300 points of ADP difference. Schmidt goes around 235. Stroman's around 535. I mean, he's an after because the floor is lava. I mean, there's no good floor with Stroman even. You know, it's not like he's Jameson Taillon as a safe guy you can get as your 8th pitcher. No, he's not that. He's not even that anymore. Maybe he was at one point in his career. He's not that any longer.
No, exactly. So you're right. The right thing would be is that Stroman goes to the bullpen and they try to keep him a little bit stretched out until such time where they need him. I even wonder if they could, maybe they can't, if they could move him during spring training, but maybe the Yankees don't want to move him because no, I think they would. I was going to say because he could have some value to them at some point when there's an injury. Like at least he is an experienced starter who could just, give them 5 innings at the back end of the bullpen. He's old at 33. He's not that old. I think they would be very open to moving him if someone would, and paying maybe even part of his contract if someone wanted him.
Yeah. I just think he's Kyle Hendricks now. I mean, I think he's, hey, great that he can fill in a pinch. But yeah. And by the way, I mean, there's going to be injuries. You're going to need this depth. I don't want to criticize the Yankees for having 6, 7, 8 starter options because,
smart.
How many innings is Garrett Cole going to throw this year? Max Fried has had forearm strains multiple times. Luis Gil. Let's talk Luis Gil briefly. It's hard to fully back Luis Gil only because of his walks. He missed time and people forget he missed time in September too. Had a great season, threw 150 innings, but he missed time. Then he came back in a high profile, ill-suited situation as a closer in game 1 of the World Series in the extra innings there. That was kind of put him in a really unfortunate, unfair spot. But 77 walks on 151 innings. That's a ton of walks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of Gil's fantasy value was spurred by getting 15 wins, which, is nice for him, but not really a skills thing. So when you really step back and you take that column out, okay, what do we have here? We've got a pitcher with a really good strikeout rate for a starter
and a great hit rate.
It's not the best strikeout rate for a starter, but it's good. Yeah, for sure. And a good hit rate. But when you step back and look at some of the other things, he walks so many batters that it's hard to picture him maintaining a low whip. He had really low, he held batters to a 188 batting average last year and still had a 119 whip. So if the walks don't come down, that batting average, even if it comes up 20 points, 30 points, which would still be really good, the whip's going to climb into the mid 1.25, something like that. So he's not a whip guy. His ERA last year was 3.5. The estimators were more like 4.
Right.
All right. How excited?
I'm still inclined to take a few stabs at pitchers like him because he still misses bats. He still strikes guys out and he doesn't give up hits. He doesn't give up hard contact. Now it stinks when he walks the park, but what if he does improve his walk rate? What if he turns that, and he already made strides last year. He did make strong improvements. But what if he turns that 12% walk rate into 10? All of a sudden you got yourself a stew.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So he's He could really go either way, or or like he doesn't quite pull
Yeah.
batting, or the 188 average becomes like 240, which is
Right.
actually still not terrible, but it's normal.
Mhm.
And then the walks are a real killer, and all of a sudden this guy's ERA is 4.5, and
Right.
then you've got a big problem. So his ADP on all NFBC drafts so far is 194.
Yeah.
It's too rich for my blood, I think.
Yeah. I'm talking myself into taking a stab at him a
Okay.
little bit here, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to have to be certainly not a like widely rostered player for me, but maybe just a
Quick
kind
I'll,
of.
gi- I'll give you a quick name game. So these pitchers go right before him. So if you want him, you got to take him ahead of these pitchers. They all go like 10 within 10 picks of him before him. Sean Manaea, Zach Eflin, Christopher Sanchez, Taj Bradley. So if you want to get Luis Heel, you'd have to be willing probably to take him over all of those guys.
I think I would take the other guys, maybe not Bradley.
I was
But
feeling it pretty much the same way.
yeah.
Yep.
But it's close. I mean, hey, I also I'd like to be fishing in that area because I think that
Sure.
you're finally, I think I want to have a couple of anchors on my staff, and then I want to make sure I have strong hitting, and then come back and fish in this pool because I
Right.
think there are some good fish to land.
Hmm.
And I'll stop using metaphors. We'll move on. Although I'm going to talk about the Rays next, and we'll talk about fishery as
I
far
was
as
gonna
that.
say you're on the wrong team. Like I was gonna say the Marlins, but like
Yeah.
save the fish jokes for the Marlins. But
Yes.
anyways, go
Exactly.
ahead.
Sea life, if you will.
Yes, yes.
Tampa Bay Rays. They're fascinating to me because I think they have like they've got depth coming out of their ears, both the the hitting side and the pitching side. We'll start off on the pitching side. Shane McClanahan's coming back. Remember, it's been about 18 months, maybe 16 months since his surgery. So it's not
Mhm,
like he had it in April. He's had 2 full off seasons to
mhm,
try to recover from his Tommy John. You got Pepio, you got Shane Boz. I like these guys. Bradley, as we alluded to. And then you still have Zach Littell, Drew Rasmussen. They traded for Joe Boyle in the trade with the Athletics. I think he gets a chance somewhere on this pitching staff. Not
mhm,
sure if it's starting or like long relieving or something of that nature, but it's another guy that can miss some bats. And they're good at unearthing guys like that too.
mhm. Yep, for sure. I think Joe Boyle gets a chance. I just think it's gonna come a little bit later.
Okay,
Like it's gonna
I
come
agree.
more in the late spring, summer, unless he's in the bullpen. But if it's as a starter, I think maybe they put him in the minors for a couple months, work with him, work with his arsenal, and then he comes up in a couple months. But even if you take him out of the equation, I believe McClanahan will be ready for opening day. I mean, everyone else does too. And
Yep.
like McClanahan's in the rotation, Bradley's in the rotation, Pepio's in the rotation. I think Zach Littell is in the rotation. He doesn't have any other. He doesn't have any options.
Mhm.
I think he's probably in the rotation. Like he's not an amazing pitcher, but he does limit walks. Um,
See, I think Boz is in the rotation.
and then
I,
that means Drew Rasmussen's not in the rotation, and
or they go 6 man,
or they go 6 man at the beginning, which they could do because they want to limit McClanahan's innings. And then
Mhm.
beyond McClanahan, they don't really have a guy like if you look at projected ERAs at roster resource, actually Rasmussen's the only one with a great other than McClanahan with a great projected ERA. Everyone else is just kind of around 4.
Yeah.
So you're trying to limit Rasmussen's innings, you're trying to limit McClanahan's innings. Just use all 6 until some guy gets hurt.
And Rasmussen was a monster when he came back last year. He was really
Yep.
good in relief.
Yep.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm overstating it with monster, but 35 Ks in 28 and 2/3,
Hmm.
283, 108.
Hmm.
Uh, he only threw 28 innings in 16 outings, so they were definitely limiting him. How many innings can you reasonably expect him to throw this year?
I was
Uh,
about to say, doesn't it feel like all of these guys are going to throw like 125 to 155 innings?
yeah, that's the Rays way, and it works.
Hmm. And McClanahan already has that governor on him because they've
Mhm.
already said he's going to go to around 150. Bradley's not super efficient. I don't think he goes that much higher than that. Maybe Pepio does. I think they all, Littell's not good enough to. Boz, I don't think is going to. I think they just, all of these guys make whatever it is, 25 starts and throw 125 to 155 innings.
Yeah.
And then they're all useful for fantasy, but maybe none of them are number 1 or 2 starters.
Yeah, and in like Rasmussen, and for whatever reason, it's not a hard word to pronounce, and yet I stumble over it every single time. But he signed for 2 years too.
Right.
They avoided arbitration on a 2-year deal. He's
Mhm.
cheap.
Mhm.
I kind of view him as like a huge bargain in 2026 in
Mhm.
real life 2026 bargain.
Yeah.
I think that's the way the Rays kind of view it too. Uh, Before we go to first read, let's take a look at the hitting job battle. And that's at DH. It's essentially DH slash first base because Yandy Diaz is going to play one of those two spots. He's not going to play third this year. They got Junior
Mhm.
Caminero over there. So it's either Jonathan Aranda or Eloy Jimenez, or maybe some sort of platoon, with Aranda being on the plus side of the platoon as a left-handed hitter.
I think the platoon to me is where we're headed. Assuming Eloy looks good enough like he's just there as a non-roster invite. So assuming Eloy looks good enough in spring training to get a job on the team, which I don't think is
Right.
actually guaranteed the way things went last year. Like we're talking about a guy who
Right.
can't help you in the field, who can't run the bases well. Like he's got to look in spring training like he can help them with his bat. Otherwise, what's the point? To just have a kind of not very good hitter who isn't versatile at all, clogging up the roster spot. So, but let's say Eloy looks okay in spring training. I think Aranda and Eloy in a platoon with Aranda on the heavy side, to me, is probably the most logical outcome. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is also. I like Aranda a lot.
Hmm.
I think he could be sneaky.
Yep.
I think there's other pathways here, but some of that includes like left field, like Christopher Morel. Does he stick as an outfielder?
Hmm.
Johnny DeLuca is going to get more of a run in center with Jose Siri gone.
Hmm.
Um, Josh Lowe, can he stay on the field? Brandon Lau, can he stay on the field?
Hmm.
How soon does Ha-Sung Kim come back? They're just a fascinating team, I think, with all these names. And do they interject at some point in time? Carson Williams, James Anderson's number 37 ranked prospect.
Hmm.
Does he get the call and win?
Yeah.
And how much does he play?
Hmm.
And they're just, I think it's all possibility. None of this is certain. None of this is set. But I think you can dream it on to this. They're actually going to have real production out of catcher with Danny Jansen this year. I feel like they did shore up a few weaknesses. And of course, the other reason why I like Aranda is they're playing at Steinbrenner Field, which is going to
Yeah.
try to mirror the dimensions of Yankee Stadium, which obviously means that favors left-handed power.
That's right. And to give you a really clear understanding of where things are going with Aranda, so far with the Rays, he has 333 career plate appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the 333, 298 are against righties. Only 35 against lefties. In
Right.
those 35 against lefties, he's hitting 133. So like they don't play him against lefties. They don't have any intention to play him against lefties. He has done nothing to show them that he should play against lefties.
Right.
Against righties, hasn't got off to a great start in the majors. We know that, but at least a 718 OPS, which is playable. I think there's the only thing about Aranda is like, unless that changes, like there's no chance he's playing against lefties. So his at bat total is probably capped south of 500. Like it's probably capped in the high 400s, like at the most, and maybe more like the mid 400s. Not saying he couldn't help you. We've seen lots of guys over the years, be really good. Jesse Winker, and at one point Kyle Schwarber a few years ago, like be able to not really do anything against lefties, but so good against righties that they still help you in fantasy. But that's what's going to happen with Aranda. I agree with you. I don't find the Rays quite as exciting. This is like your selling of the Angels at the start of the podcast.
I wasn't even selling the Angels. You asked me if I thought that they were going to try.
I did. I asked you if you were trying. I might
I think
spin
they
this
are trying, maybe not very well, but they are trying.
by the end of this podcast. I'm going to have spun it to be like a fish story, to the point where you said the Angels are going to win.
Angels
the
and Rays lover Jeff Erickson. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't find this Rays lineup like as exciting, I think, maybe as you do. I just see, I think Junior Caminero is super exciting. I think Brandon Lau gets hurt every year. So I'm just kind of like skeptical on him.
Fair.
I think Josh Lowe is an interesting bounce back. The rest of it, I'm not. I like Aranda. I agree with you on that. Yandy Diaz, sure. I don't know. The rest of it, I want to like Christopher Morel. I don't.
Yeah.
I watched Danny Jansen play for years. I love the guy. Like I love him as a baseball player. He's just not a great hitter. He's going to pull 15 balls for home runs if you let him play enough, but that's about it. I don't know. I don't love this Rays line. I'm really interested to see what happens to the Rays this year. That rotation that we talked about is good. We'll see what the home park does to it. Like if that home park hurts it or not. Yeah, I don't know. If you think the home park's going to play hitter friendly, Here's what I'll give you. If you think the home park's going to play hitter friendly, there probably is some sneaky value in this Rays lineup somewhere.
I think that's right.
Because of the home park. Like maybe a guy like Chris Morel does a lot better than I think he's going to. Maybe Josh Lowe like massively bounces back like to what he was a couple years ago. Like there's probably something in there that's there's probably some sneaky value in there. There almost would have to be, or the Rays just stink, but that doesn't really ever happen.
Yeah, right. And, and although it's funny, they also don't like when they finally are expected to do well, they kind of like, they were pretty good, but it's kind of funny how that works.
The Rays thing is to do, is to just maybe almost just to not do what you expect.
Exactly.
When you finally get on board, then they're like, no, our payroll's tiny. We're actually just okay.
Yep. Yeah. All right, we're going to move out of the AL East with Fred Hater Zinke, but first we're going to go on talk a little note from our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring systems, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today and be entered to win an official MLB signed jersey from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/rotowire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. All right, let's move to the AL West. Kind of alluded to this here earlier, but Houston has done some pulling back in some spots, and they did add Christian Walker, and they added Isaac Paredes in the Kyle Trucker trade. So they're not exactly like punting or anything, but it's also not considered a behemoth of a team. And they've got some positions that are still unsettled in the outfield for certain, and the rotation as well, where they added Hayden Wesneski. They've kind of got year two of Spencer Arrighetti. Ronel Blanco was an emerging guy last year, and they've got injured guys, Lance McCullers and Luis Garcia, coming back at some point. Probably neither of them to start the season. Let's talk about that rotation at first.
Yeah, I think Wesneski's probably the odd man out if everybody's healthy. Like Luis Garcia is coming back. His surgery was way back, like early in 2023, so he should be fine. So I think Garcia's in the rotation. Like he was always a full-time starter for them. Framber Valdez is in the rotation. Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, Arrighetti. I think that's the five, and I think Wesneski is the odd man out. And then I would guess maybe Wesneski starts the year in AAA. He does still have another option, so maybe he starts the year in AAA just to keep him stretched out for when they need someone rather than putting him in the bullpen. Because they do have relievers. Like their bullpen's not amazing, but it's plenty good enough. Like they don't really need Wesneski in the bullpen.
There were notes on both McCullers and Garcia, though, that they would not be ready for opening day.
I can't imagine. The Garcia one to me would be really surprising. Like unless he's had setbacks.
They straight up said it, though. Okay. Dana Brown said it, that they won't be ready for opening day. He said this the end of January. So
okay.
We had Paul Sporer on the Sirius XM show tonight, and he's kind of a Wesneski guy.
Yeah.
But he fully acknowledges he's got to get off to a good start.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be a case there where he does well enough, and then maybe Arrighetti or Blanco is at risk a little bit. I think both of those guys, Arrighetti had an ERA in the sixes for a good chunk of the season last year. Obviously got much better over the second half of the season, ended up at 453, 141. Good progress, lots of strikeouts, not a finished product though.
For sure. And I think Blanco, so to put Blanco in perspective, he was not drafted in the Tout Wars draft and hold league last year. 50 rounds, 15 teams. That he's also 31. So we're talking about a guy who at age 30 had so little status that he wasn't taken in that 15 team league. And that league draft went well into like mid to late March. It wasn't like it was just done in January or February and he was way off the radar. So I think Ronel Blanco too, even though it looks like he should be able to have to at least repeat enough to stay in the rotation. We know this, we've been through this. You do need to be wary of guys who almost completely come out of nowhere on the other side of 30. They're
had a steroid suspension.
Right. They're poor bets to repeat. So again, like this
Or
isn't
not
me.
steroids. I'm sorry. I need to correct the record here. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Go ahead.
it was doctoring the baseball for him, wasn't it?
Right. It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So it
was.
was only
Yeah.
10 days, 10,
That's right.
10 games. So
That's
sorry,
right. That's
my
okay.
bad.
But and we're also talking about someone who had a 2.80 ERA, but all of his ERA estimators were 4 or higher.
Mhm.
So again, like Blanco, it isn't really, this isn't just totally like a statistical argument, but when you really look at him, it's just, we know the track record of guys, like I said, on the other side of 30 who come out of absolutely nowhere to have a really great season. They often go back to nowhere, pretty
Right.
much as fast as they came. So I think he's the one who could be the most vulnerable, where he goes out and we're 3 starts into the season and his ERA is 9, and they're just like, okay, there was some lightning in a bottle last year. Like, it's just not there this year. And yeah, like you said, if everything holds with Garcia, and I wasn't aware of that, I really looked at his timeline and felt like he'd be ready for opening day. But let's say he's not. But let's say he's not too far behind. Maybe Wesneski gets a few starts, like Paul
Yeah.
Sporer said, has to get off to a good start, and then maybe someone like Blanco has a 9 ERA, and then he gets replaced, and Wesneski gets to stay in the rotation.
Yeah, it's going to be it'll be interesting to see that. And Arrighetti certainly is not set. I do want some shares of Hunter Brown. I want some shares of Framber. I have been taking Arrighetti here and there though. I will still take some chances on
For
him.
sure.
But what about Garcia or McCullers? I know even though they're not going to be ready for the start of the season, are you interested in them and rostering them in your Tout Wars draft and hold league?
Yep. Garcia, not McCullers. I don't think I can do McCullers anymore.
Yeah,
I just,
he's out to me until he shows me anything.
yeah, it's too many injuries. I can't believe Lance McCullers is 31. Like,
I know.
I feel like the last time I saw him pitched, he was an up and comer, which he kind of was. Like his, like 2022 when he last pitched, he was 28. But he didn't pitch much that year. The year before, when he pitched a lot, 2021, he was 27. Like, I felt like he was a guy just like still hitting his prime, getting into his prime, and now all of a sudden he's 31, broken down. Yeah, he made 8 starts in 2022. He hasn't pitched since. Like, even in a 50 rounder, I'm gonna pass.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's certain pitchers like that. Like, who were we talking about earlier? There was an injured pitcher that's thrown like 5 innings since in 2023 and nothing since. It's just, it's hard. They'll make it a return at some point in time, but it's really tough to kind of rely on them doing that there. All right, let's stick in the division. Let's talk about the Texas Rangers, because everybody keeps expecting them to sign another reliever, but they've got like $5 million away from the second luxury tax threshold, and they want to definitely stay underneath that there, which is why they're not going to sign, some of these relievers, some top relievers on the market. That's why they weren't in the Kenley market, for instance. They might not even be in the David Robertson market. But they do have Chris Martin. They traded for Robert Garcia in the Nate Lowe deal. And Jacob Webb, who's had some closing experience, might also be there. We'll see about that. I know I said we were going to talk about closer job battle. So I just want to mention that that's still out there. But let's go to the rotation because that's still up in the air. It's really interesting to kind of see, like, John Gray isn't guaranteed to be a starter. There's some like scuttlebutt rumors that he might move to the bullpen there. In fact, we have a note from yesterday talking about they've had internal discussions about him going to the bullpen. If he goes to the bullpen, he might close. So, but we'll see. They got DeGrom. They've got Evaldi. We know they're going to start. Tyler Malley has missed a bunch of time, but he's supposed to start. It's Cody Bradford, Kumar Rocker. Somewhere, you still might see Leiter at some point in time get another shot. Kind of some interesting names in that rotation.
Absolutely. And I do think that Kumar Rocker's probably the odd man out, just because of the fact that he didn't throw many innings last year. So I think he's probably the odd man out, unless he just looks so electric in spring training that they just can't. And that's actually a possibility with him. So
yeah,
like, we're talking about a guy who in the minors hasn't pitched much, but in 64 minor league innings, he has 97 strikeouts. So we're talking about basically a strikeout and a half.
Plus the prospect hype
Absolutely.
coming up, going back to his Vanderbilt days.
Third pick overall in the draft. Yeah. Absolutely. I do think that probably the way this plays out, though, is because Cody Bradford had some good starts last year. He was really good at the start of last year, and then got hurt. Like, if everyone comes out of spring training healthy, which is a big if with this group, like, Eovaldi at 35 DeGrom at 36. John Gray's been hurt a lot. Like you said, Malley, Bradford was hurt last year. Like there's a really good chance one of these guys is hurt by opening day. But if they were all healthy, maybe even if they're not, the plan could be to just start Rocker in the minors, manage his innings a bit, and then bring him up at some point. But if there was an injury, I could see them starting off Rocker in the rotation and then saying, like, we're going to have to do some things to manipulate his innings during the season. But we might as well, he's healthy now, we might as well get some starts out of him now and see where it goes.
Yep, I think that's right. By the way, I think we're going to turn this in. This is going long enough that we're just going to turn this into AL job battles, and we'll talk NL next week here because I still have plenty more I want to talk about here. But yeah, I think, Cody Bradford and Tyler Malley have both missed enough time. If they do follow through, though, by the way, with their notion of their discussions and moving Gray to the bullpen, that solves that for us a little bit. Then both Bradford and Rocker are in. Dane Dunning still is hanging around the picture too. It's always one of those like, oh, we'll just hand wave him away. He doesn't exist, but he could still win the job too.
Oh yeah. Oh, he could. You're right. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he will. The reason I think Gray also won't go to the bullpen is I don't even think Gray would necessarily be great in the bullpen. Like, I don't think his stuff plays to the point where, like, he could be some sort of dominant closer for them or something. That, you know, who could be a dominant closer for them is Kumar Rocker, but that they're not going to do that. Like, that doesn't make sense in the long run. Like, they've drafted him so high.
He's one of those players they're going to take as a starter as long as they possibly can to see if it works, because he's
I think
a lot more as a starter.
Yeah, and I think it will. So I'm just saying, it's not like Gray to the bullpen. Like, you're like, oh, well, now we've got a lockdown closer. Like, you might not. You might just have an average reliever.
So many closers are failed starters too. It's kind of funny.
For sure.
I could see Jack Leiter being someone that they like, okay, we've given up on him being a successful starter. Let's try him in the bullpen, see what happens there. So there's stuff like that happens all the time. There's a sneaky guy in the Rays I kind of like in that respect too. Mason Montgomery, who was converted to a relief pitcher late last year after being an early pick and being one of their top starting pitching prospects for years. He's someone who all of a sudden now is a reliever again, closed at AAA at the end of the year last year. He's lefty, so it probably won't happen, but it's the Rays. They can do kind of crazy things. And I think the Rangers are almost in that sort of scenario there. So we'll see what they do with all of that there, but because they've got a lot of different options that they can kind of turn out to try to make things work there. But we're going to take a couple more AL job battles, but first, got to share a note for you from our friends over at Edge Boost. Have you ever had your debit card decline or had to call your bank at 3 a.m. in Vegas? Edge Boost is the first consumer-facing online bank dedicated to the gaming industry. There are numerous benefits to using Edge Boost. You can get up to $250,000 per day in debit deposits, unlimited withdrawals, cash back on sports betting, DFS, and sweeps, 100% approval for all gaming activity, financial segmentation for discretion and responsible gaming, compatible today for prediction markets, iCasino, DFS, sports betting, lottery, brick and mortar, casinos, horse racing, and sweeps. No transaction reviews or account freezes. Visit edgeboost.bet and use promo code ROTOPOD. That's promo code ROTOPOD. Thank you to Edge Boost for your sponsorship there. Let's move on. Talk a little Detroit Tigers. They're a team that's had a beautiful second half, a little run in the playoffs. They've got some job battles still left. Both, I think, at first and second base a little bit, as well as in the rotation. Let's start off in the rotation. Skubal, Flaherty, Olsen, I think, are pretty well set. Cobb, Jobe, Mize, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, Cobb is such a massive injury risk, but I have to think that if Cobb can survive spring training, he's in. Like, you're not going to mess around with Alex Cobb with all this injury.
Let's make him a full effort closer. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So I think if Cobb makes it through, then he's in. Like, they brought him in. It's notable a little bit to me. Like, they did bring him in fairly early in the offseason, at least for the glacial pace of the Major League Baseball offseason. He was fairly early in the offseason. So they clearly wanted him. Like, he wasn't a last minute February the 11th signing.
Right.
So I think he's in. So then it comes down to Casey Mize and Jackson Jobe. We know what Tigers fans will want. But it wouldn't shock me at all to see Casey Mize there as the fifth starter at the start of the year, and Jackson Jobe spends a little bit more time in the minors.
Yeah, I think that's probably the likely result as well. But I could see Casey Mize just straight up not, they might just kind of say, okay, this hasn't worked out. But I mean, it's first overhaul pick. It's tough to do that. But he also just hasn't shown the signs. At some point, they gotta act as if they're contenders. And if they do, then Mize could be the odd guy out. Kind of like with Spencer Torkelson, for that matter, too. And they've kind of demonstrated by their moves that Torque might be out. That they signed Gleyber Torres. He's going to play second base, almost certainly. They've suggested Colt Keith could move to first base. Kerry Carpenter is probably going to be the DH unless Wenzel Perez or Matt Vierling is ruled out. They still have Trey Sweeney is likely taking over for Javier Baez at shortstop. Maybe Baez factors in. But right now, there's not a projected starting spot for Torque.
Yeah, I don't think they plan on starting him. I don't know what they're going to do with him, if he'll be on the bench or what he's going to be, but I don't think he's really in their plans right now. But actually, before we finish with Torque, if I could jump back to rotation for a minute,
yeah,
I also
of course.
want to mention there's a non-zero chance that it's also, if Casey Mize stinks, it still could not be Jobe, and it could be someone like Kiter Montero or Matt Manning. The Tigers have a bunch of pitching depth right now. It's not exciting pitching depth, like we talked about with the Rays, but these guys like Matt Manning and Kiter Montero, they have a bunch of major league starts to their credit, and any of them could just be their fifth starter.
I'd agree with that,
depending on how they're pacing Jobe's innings.
Penta Maeda, my guy that one of my biggest mistakes last year.
Yeah,
of which there were many, and I held on to him too long too. I should have seen the velocity reports in spring training and just gotten away, and I just didn't.
It's too bad. He was good for fantasy for a while, and like you said, you held on a little too long.
Yeah, and that's, and I think that's one of the tricky things in fantasy is we want to hold on to our prospects. We want to hold on, give them time, and but you can't be afraid to make mistakes too, and you can't be afraid to just. You keep churning because you can always add a guy back if he looks better, but the mistake of holding on too long, it has a longer lasting impact. So that's kind of a takeaway I need to relearn sometimes.
So sorry, jumping back over, I know I veered, but jumping back over to Torque. So I'll set the over under on 330 at bats this year. At bats. What do you want to take on Torque? The over or the under?
Under. I hate it because I added them in XFL before they kind of before they added more players. And, first of all, they only had 342 at bats last year. I got to adjust my projection.
Does Torque get traded then? So here's what I got. I know he was the first pick, but he's 25. He's 25 years old. And if you're not willing to give him 330 at bats, then, and this isn't like pitching where you stockpile depth. Like if you're not willing to play him, you just don't think he's any good. They've got a bunch of guys in their lineup who are projected to have an OPS around 700. So if they thought he could hit, he'd be in. So I wonder if he could get traded during spring training. Like I wonder if there's a fit somewhere where maybe like a team that's not really competing right now says, we'll give you someone who can help you this year. Like we'll give you a reliever. Exactly. We'll give you a reliever for Torque. We'll take him and see if we can rebuild him. Like I'm picturing like a Marlins, or like he would fit perfect on the Marlins. They have no first baseman. So
it doesn't have to be a bad team though. It can be a good team that gives them limited playing time as they rebuild them too. It's just as in hey, this is buy lowest. Chris Liss always says buy lowest. Well, this is lowest. And maybe change of scenery would be good for him too. I mean, Detroit's a tough place to hit. First of all, ballpark wise, it's tough. Even with them and moving the fences in a little bit from the past, it's still one of the deeper home run fences in most parts of that ballpark. Then there's the weather. Detroit, Minnesota, Cleveland, basically the AL Central. Those guys, I mean, those ballparks are tough places to hit in April and May, and it's not just April. And add in Chicago too. I mean, Wrigley Field was insanely tough to hit in last year. For compared to like what you expect out of Wrigley Field, it's not a it's not necessarily a bandbox. It's many times it's a difficult place to hit, and so I feel like I need to be more cognizant of that with my roster building. Maybe not have so many players from those parks, those divisions.
Maybe at least be aware at the start of the year when you're streaming, like give the weather maybe more credence than you have in the past. I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's something. Oakland, I know I'm still stuck on bad teams, but Oakland's another team that I thought why not? Like Tyler Soderstrom's projected to be their first baseman, and maybe they just want to use him, but maybe they could pick up Torque for a reliever. And
plus with them playing in Sacramento, I mean, we like that.
Yeah, like that's what I mean, and try to get him off to a better start, out of the limelight. Work with their coaches. You just go hit. There's no fans here, so no pressure. I don't know. I think there's a fit there. So I think that would be the obvious out for the Tigers. But I know it's like a sell super duper low,
right?
But it's better than having them at 25 just playing in AAA.
Yep. Maybe so. Yeah. Maybe so. All right. We are on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. Okay, thank you, Blue Wire. Let's talk Kansas City Royals. Stick in the AL Central. The one ballpark we didn't mention is death to hitters, and it's still not that great of a ballpark to hit in there. But let's talk, though, about their rotation battle there. An interesting name here. I'm glad you listed him. Kris Bubic pitched in relief last year, but previously was a starter. They brought him back after a long absence from Tommy John. Looked pretty good, and before his injury, he changed his pitch mix a little bit there and was generating more strikeouts. I am intrigued by him if he gets the role.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a pretty good chance that he will. I mean, he's in an earn it during spring training situation, but I think there's a pretty good chance that Bubic will get the role. And I assume, I've not spent any time on his ADP, but I bet he is he's a little more expensive than I thought. ADP 381. I thought if I had to guess before I typed it in, I would have said 450.
Yeah.
So I know you were saying earlier, 381, 450 doesn't really make much difference. It's so late in the draft and it's so random at that point in the draft. I totally agree with you on that, but I thought he would have been a total last round guy, but he's not quite. You're going to have to get him more in the middle of your bench.
And starting if you go from February 1st on, he's at 344. So he's already starting to rise a little bit.
And that's kind of, now in a 15 team league, you're kind of like early bench, fairly early bench. So yeah. I think he's going to be in the rotation. I guess Alec Marsh is just the odd man out. He just has to go back down to the minors and wait his turn out of that group. But I still think you'll see 100 innings out of Alec Marsh this year.
Yeah, I can see it there. I mean, how many innings is Lorenzen good for? How many innings is Bubic good for that matter? I mean, they start off
super durable,
but Reagan's Lugo Waka seems pretty stable.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it is for sure. I guess I don't think of. I think I'm kind of right on this. Like Waka misses some starts every year.
Yeah.
Last year he was really good, 166 and 2/3 innings. But if you track back before that, you have to go all the way to 2017 to find him with more than 135 innings. So it's a pretty good bet that Waka doesn't repeat what he did last year.
For sure.
He's 33, and that the innings total the starts is more like 24. So he misses 8 starts or something like that. So anyways, I do like Reagans and Lugo as durable as we can expect from pitchers. But I think there's a lot of room there, for someone else to throw innings. But I think Bubic could be, he's a guy who could make 30 starts.
Yeah, very well could. Mm-hmm. I could see it happening.
And if you look again on Roster Resource, he's got a lower projected ERA than Waka and much, much lower than Lorenzen. Yeah. Lorenzen's the real wild card there. Like he could not work out as a starter at all.
That's right. Let's finish with the Minnesota Twins, and they have a very crowded rotation battle here. There's some guys I like in this too, but they start off with Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober, and Joe Ryan coming back from the lat strain, all of which I think are very interesting. But the guys after that are still interesting too. David Festa, I think, can miss a lot of bats. Zebby Matthews had some acclaim, had one hideous outing that wrecked his numbers last year. Chris Paddock and Simeon Woods Richardson, who had a lot of starts last year and isn't guaranteed a spot in this rotation.
Yeah, I feel like Woods Richardson will find his way in. The estimators don't like him at all. Right. I get it. He walks a fair amount of batters, but I think Woods Richardson, he's someone who made 28 starts for them last year, 4.17 ERA, 4.04 FIP. I think he's only 24. Is a lot younger than everyone else in that rotation. I think Woods Richardson's in as long as he's fine in spring training. I think his spot's his. Chris Paddock, I don't have any faith in at all.
None.
And actually, some of the projected stats for him this year actually aren't bad, which really kind of surprises me because he was really bad last year.
My problem with Woods Richardson is he just doesn't go deep into games.
No, he doesn't.
He didn't pitch 5 innings once in September. His last 5-inning outing was in August 21st. And meanwhile, there's a number of 4.2s out there. And I vividly remember this, Fred, because I had him in the NFBC main event where he had leads and they pulled him, including at Cleveland, where he went 4 2/3 and only allowed 1 run on a solo homer, had 6 Ks and a walk, he'd thrown 72 pitches at the time, and Rocco Baldelli yanked him. That's just the worst. Like when you pull a Zambrano, you get pulled with the lead and you've given up like 4 runs in 4 2/3. Okay, fine, you've earned it. But they seem to have like had a very quick hook on him, and it just kind of makes me wary of like Minnesota pitchers generally too. If they're that religious about third time through the order.
Okay, so I'm going to say 2 different things that contradict themselves.
Okay, I usually do that. That's my job.
Well, this time I'm going to say, okay, so first I'm going to say he was only 23 last season. Not a lot of pitchers make like 28 starts in the majors at 23. Like a lot of pitchers are on a pretty slow road to the majors. So at 23, yes, there was a lot of short starts, but just to make 28 starts is pretty impressive. Like he is someone who, if he was pitching well, like could build from here and add another inning to his starts. So there's my positive comment. My negative comment is his stuff plus going into this season is 89, and an 89 stuff plus is like really bad. Like 100's average. Okay, for people who don't spend much time looking at
so explain stuff plus a little bit more for the uninitiated or ignoramuses like me that could use a refresher. How is it measured? Where can you find it?
Right. So I'm not Eno Saris. I'm not going to be an expert at explaining stuff plus. However, stuff plus takes into account the quality of all of the pitches that a pitcher throws. For Woods Richardson, he throws 4 different pitches. One cool thing you can do at Fangraphs actually is this year they just changed it. I think they just changed it in the off season. If you're a subscriber, which you should be because we all use Fangraphs a lot.
Yes.
You can customize the way the player dashboard at the top of the screen appears when you pull up a player. And there's a bunch of different options for what you can have in the boxes when you set it. So I set in the off season one of my boxes at the top of the page to be the pitcher's stuff plus profile. So there's stuff plus, and then his location plus, and his pitching plus. I like to just look at his stuff plus at first, just to see like how good is his stuff. And again, 100 is average. So if you have average stuff for a major leaguer, yours is 100. You'll often, and it's broken up by pitch. So often relievers will have like a really good relievers will have like these insane stuff pluses because they only have 2 pitches, but they're both awesome pitches, which is why they're such good relievers. His at 89 is like, that's like I said, that's pretty bad. Like the distribution, like usually pitchers who aren't great will still be like in the mid 90s for stuff plus, high 90s even for stuff plus. So for his at 89 is really bad. His fastball is on his stuff plus on his fastball 77.
And when you say he is for the clarification,
Woods Richardson.
Simeon Woods Richardson.
Because you're right. I haven't mentioned that in a while. So his changeup's good. It's 107, so it's a little bit above average. His slider's bad, and he throws the slider a lot. It's 95, but his fastball is really bad. It's 77 for stuff plus. And that's like, and he throws it 40% of the time. So like that's the part that has me worried. Like at first, I just wanted to look at him and say, he's 23 last year. He's 24 this year. Like he can take a step forward. And I could also throw out that his fastball velocity jumped a lot last year, and it was 93 miles an hour, which is still not great, but it's not bad. But man, when I look at that stuff plus, like it doesn't look like someone who's on the verge of a breakout. Like this doesn't look like a young guy who's got the stuff and just hasn't figured out how to harness it, what to throw more, what to throw less, when to throw what. Like, but it's there. It kind of looks like the stuff plus is so bad for him that it kind of looks like it's not there.
Right.
And that's concerning for me because I'm trying to give this guy like a bit of a bit of a break here.
To that end, I like Festa a lot better. And I think I like Matthews, but I'm not as sold on Matthews as I am Festa. Festa is the one of those 4 that I feel the best about. Again, I don't want to kind of, will my preference into existence as fact. I think it's a thing it can be a little dangerous to do. So I won't do that. But at the same time, I think he's got a lot more of a ceiling that we're trying to chase after. Whereas Woods Richardson, I think he's fine. And, and again, draft and hold where you just need guys that have the job. Yeah, he's probably going to throw 100 innings, and that'll be useful.
Yeah. Woods Richardson is the classic guy who'll be way more useful to the Twins than he is to anyone in fantasy. I wouldn't draft him, actually, the more I look at his profile. To jump back to the Stuff Plus a little bit, I was saying his 89 is really bad. Zebby Matthews and Festa were both, I just looked up quickly, they were both like 97, 98. So their stuff is just a little bit worse than average. So it's still not great. Bailey Ober, by the way, has a poor Stuff Plus. So it's not like you can't succeed in the majors, without a great Stuff Plus. But the 89 from Woods Richardson, like I said, I'm not a Stuff Plus encyclopedia. I'm not a savant at it or anything.
Liar.
But I do.
Yeah, you are.
But I do keep track of it, and it is something that I look at with pitchers for sure. And I don't see a lot of 89s for successful starters. That's pretty low.
I think it's a good filter. It's a good, hey, well, if he's that low, well, I'm less interested at least. And, may not be one where okay, he's 101. I'm definitely in on him. But at the same time, 89, it's an extreme. Yeah. I kind of get away from there as well.
It is. Yeah. Like I can live with mid 90s. That's your stuff's below average, but maybe how to use, Pablo Lopez is his mid 90s. But maybe how to use your, what to throw when you're smart pitcher. But 89's, pretty low. Again, I'm trying to cut this guy a break, though. He, like I said, he is really young. I do mention a lot. I mentioned this with Nolan Shanwell in some articles recently on the Angels. We have to be careful of making firm opinions on guys at an age where all of their cohort is still in the minors. And that's a little bit Woods Richardson at 23 as a full-time starter in the majors. So many guys his age last year were still pitching in the minors.
I'd agree with that.
Then they come up and we get excited about them. But you ruin your reputation at a stage where maybe you shouldn't have even been in the, or it's just admirable that you were even ready to be out on full display. Well, to put it example, he's younger, he's the same age as Zebby Matthews and David Festa. He's a few months younger than both of them.
Yeah, both of them. But neither of those guys are old either. That's the other thing. And he just has a little bit more experience. I think that's it.
So that's where I'm trying not to make up my mind on Woods Richardson that he isn't good. He can't be good. I'm well, that's just because I've seen more of him than these other guys. These guys have this potential I haven't seen because they haven't made a lot of starts in the majors. But he is so young that if he had just made all his starts in AAA last year and they said he was going to be in the rotation, I'd probably be a little more excited about him.
For sure.
Yeah, we're fickle, us fantasy.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Well, hey, we're Mr. Right now, not Mr. Right.
We are. Yeah, for sure.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. We're going to hit NL job battles next week because AL covered an entire segment for us here. So thank you for those of you joining us in the live stream, and if you caught us on the podcast as well, we thank you for that. If you're interested in more of what we have at RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/try. You get a free trial. Peek behind the paywall for a couple of days. No credit card is required, as always. So rotowire.com/try. Big thanks to Fred Zinke for joining me again tonight. James Anderson will be at you tomorrow. Take care.